Purpose of the meeting was to hear from Bret, right? And we had a short conversation here a while back. I suggested that he come and just explain the whole situation. So I haven't heard all of this either to the entire board. So without further ado, I'm just gonna turn it over to you to kind of tell us what's going on.
Cool, sounds great.
Come on up here, please.
Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yes. And I met
Tracy,
you already. We
Casady,
had a,
yeah.
I think she's a little bit familiarized with the meeting part of this.
Just brief.
So first, before I start the meeting, the biggest thing that I want put on the table, and I think I've shared this with you, is the Silver Valley is already having its tax burdens really being hampered on it already. I've heard the stories, I've heard a lot of people share how bad the financials, you can use a lot of help. So before I start, what I have to say, I want to make it really clear. The bill that I was presented with, which is one of the reasons why I'm coming here for this meeting, if it comes down to the point to where it can't be rectified with the company that issued that payment, we will pay it. My goal here isn't to try to get out of the debt. My goal here was to bring light to something that I felt was inappropriate and how it went about coming there. Because I don't want to pass on to the people of this valley a burden that's no fault to their own. I'll pay it. Because I don't want that burdening somebody who had nothing to do with the way this process worked out. So to start out on 9/23, I proposed to the site disturbance permit with planning and zoning. The first application I filled out looked like their old one that was not revised. When I submitted that application to them on 9/23, presented it with a typical laid out plan with a picture explaining what we were looking at doing with this piece of property. I felt that when I bought the property, there was a lot of erosion problems with the property already. There was a lot of rock falling into the road, hampering our ability to travel to our upper property. It was, back at the time it was cut too steep and created too many issues because of the rock shell layers layering against the cut line. Those rocks are constantly falling in. So one of the reasons we bought the property was to help beautify and get that cleaned up and get some growth going onto it so the upper properties on South Fork Ridge would not have to go through all this debris falling onto the road. So we're going to extend on this road, on South Fork Ridge Road, we plan on the future to clean that slope up and then get some growth going on it, get some hydro seeding done on it and so forth.
Is that a public road?
It is, and it's a private, no, I'm sorry, it is a private road that is gated down by Zanetti's pit, so there is a power gate coming up to that property.
So there's other people that go down that road, that
Correct.
share that road, private road with you?
Right now, there's currently 2 people living up there, the last of the Franks and us. We're living on our upper piece, and the Franks are living in further at the end. So this is something that was brought up in the meeting when I first proposed this. There's been a lot of development going on in the valley. There hasn't been a lot of development going up there. I'd probably say that me and Brent's really starting to trigger a lot of what's going up there on that. We've been talking a lot about the road, trying to find a way to make it safer. So here's a current picture of what that rock shell looks like and how bad it's falling in. You can see the ditch and how it's constantly eroding into there. When I proposed the plan, I made it clear we're gonna take that all out and level it.
Take it out of the ditch?
Yeah, this whole area there, and it goes to the back side of that property as well. So all of this eroding into a back private road that goes up behind Zanetti's pit. This is South Fork Ridge Road. You can see how bad it's eroding and going in there. I proposed these pictures to planning and zoning to show where we were gonna put the material. So this kind of shows an area in pocket, and I laid that plan out. When I proposed that to her, she came back and says, well, we've revised it on 9/22, a new permit. So she had me start over again, and then we took the time to do a bullet point. I explained to her everything that we're gonna do on this permit.
So this is, I thought you said this was 9/23.
Correct. So the first permit and the way the application looks for your site disturbance went from this to this. So she asked me, because she said she couldn't get enough information on this, to prepare a new application, so which I did do. And at that application, we added the things that she was requiring. What cost associated was involved in that was all written there. I did another map, a more detailed map, and also bullet points of exactly what we were going to do, because she said this was incomplete and inability to obtain the proper information about what we were going to do. I took the time and I said, okay, good idea. It was an awesome idea because it gave me a chance to explain really in good detail what we were planning on doing. So I proposed this to her. After proposing that to her, she said that this is a little bit off her expertise, and based upon what we were planning and proposing to her, so she wanted to submit it to a company called HMH. At that point, I was kind of curious on what this was all about, didn't know anything about HMH. I heard that they contracted with the county, and that when you guys have things that come up through the county, you contract with HMH to get that, get some knowledge behind it and get that information, so we're not disturbing and messing up the land in such a way that makes it bad for everybody. The biggest thing I learned from this process is trying to do things in the Silver Valley withstands the test of time. And I totally agree with that. Hence the reason why I wanted to develop this is to eliminate dodging rocks coming down along this whole face side, because it was cut so steep over 10 years ago. So it was an opportunity to also learn, and I enjoyed doing this to be able to get some more knowledge and understanding on it. Given these bullet points, she submitted it to HMH. After HMH received it, I was a little bit curious about this HMH. I'm like, okay, how come I'm being treated with this when I've talked to so many other people that they've never heard of this before? So the understanding after talking with planning zoning is that there's been a lot of new developments coming on in the valley, a lot of things that have been bad for the valley, and they didn't get into telling me about the stories, that we're kind of like the guinea pigs being used to start this way of doing it the right way. And I have no problem with that because I believe in protecting the environment. So after I got that document and they submitted to it, I asked a previous commissioner, have you ever heard of HMH? Are they a legit company? I wanted to make sure that I was being treated fairly and that things were being done right. So I was told by a previous commissioner, it is a legit company, that it is used by the county. So I developed a trust with that comment. With that report, they gave me back my report after looking at the property. And in that report, that's probably where I got the best understanding, is on that report of where this was all going. And I'm like, okay, so I studied it up. I took the time to make a phone call to HMH because I disagreed with his verbiage that is in the letter. And if you look at the way he's stating things inside that letter, what I did is I broke down his letter. And when he's using the data that he pulls off the government websites and this type of data that he's using for the land and so forth, I go, okay, this is good information. This gives me some knowledge on knowing what to do when I'm cutting into this earth the right way and the wrong way. So pulling up that data, he was using words of, it appears to look like, and it looks like, but I wasn't getting a definitive. And I said, so I took the time to call the gentleman who reviewed this at HMH and talked on the phone for about 3 hours to get some knowledge and some understanding over it. And in the end result of that conversation, I said, would it be fair to say then, based upon the fact that you're using wording like it appears to look and it looks like, and based upon the data that he's pulling off the government website, he felt it needed to be structurally engineered. The reason I disagreed with that is because he was using words of it appears to look. And I go, well, would it be fair to say to come out on site and look at the site, let me explain to you in detail with all this stuff, which I thought was already doing it. And so I submitted that to Monica in a letter, and I proposed that letter to Monica in this email. And so she took that email and she agreed to meet with HMH, me and her, up on site. And it was the week later, and we took the time to go meet up on the property, took the time. The gentleman that came out, he said that based upon what I told him we were doing, and we were removing this entire area, he says, well, then you're going to be within code by doing that, not requiring me to do structural engineering. So in this whole process, when he gets it back, he then submitted his review after we met up on property. And he said that based upon after that review, their requirement would be then to stay under the coding, which is whatever you disturb within a given area, 25% of that area has to stay under 15% grade as per code. If you go over that, you have to have it structurally engineered. So they, just to be on the safe side, he said, since we're taking this away, it would create all this blue across this whole entire area, dropping it down below that 25% threshold, which is exactly what I explained here in the very beginning when I first submitted it with all the pictures. So after he took the time to come to the site and review the site in person, Monica then passed on our permit, gave us our address, and then she gave her, I can't remember where I put it in here, but she says that there can be a strong argument not to issue this without structural engineering due to the fact of the data and everything that's sitting in there. We met with him for 4 hours, got the permit, she issued it. We were very excited to get started. We were on a time crunch. We were trying to get it done before the winter got here so I could take advantage of the snow coming down to give it some settling ability for all the dirt we moved. We got all of our wattling controls in, store management controls in on the property, took pictures of those and sent them in. We started with our project. When I came down to pay for the permit, she charged me $65 and including the permit fee. She said those have to be paid first before we issue your permit. So she took the time to charge me the $65 for the time that they drive up there. There's a $65 fee for doing so. After I paid that bill, we were on the go. Then we received a bill, and hence the reason what brought me into the meeting. And the bill was for like $1,100 from HMH. I brought that bill up to the previous commissioners, met, and you were there in the office, and presented the bill, and I'd like, there's nowhere in any of this document stating that we would be responsible for the fees associated with HMH. There's nothing in the application. She said that she did tell me this, and I disagree with that because I don't remember hearing that. And I said to myself, well, if she did tell me this, I wouldn't have sat out there and spoke with the guy for an extra 4 hours being charged $110 an hour. I wouldn't have sat on the phone and talked with him for 3 hours knowing I'm being charged for $110 per hour. I would have kept them short, sweet, and specific to the point, got bullet points and kept the conversation shorter had I known any of these. But as the beginning part of the conversation was, I'm not trying to get out of the debt. I'm trying to say that we were not presented with this debt. It was a surprise for us. And then I started thinking, okay, how many other people are gonna submit a plan? And then all of a sudden they're getting a bill from HMH without being told about it. So again, that's the one part of the story. We did get our permit. We got everything issued and done. So then the bill is the one thing from HMH that came in. Never once did the gentleman that I spoke with at HMH said there would be a charge for this when I talked to him on the phone for 3 hours. None of that conversation. I'm not gonna say Monica didn't tell me, but there was a lot of things that were being said and done at that time. So she may have, and I didn't hear that, given her the benefit of doubt. But to me, it's in the writing. And to me, it's like when I have my property taxes, it's in writing, it's there. We know what we have. There's absolutely nothing in the permit with these new changes of using HMH to validate proper land changes or whatever. I would feel it would be in the new revised application that they just did on 9/22. But there is absolutely no documentation, no nothing that I've been able to find to show that we would be responsible for this HMH stuff that was gonna start taking place. Then brings me to my other point. Using the same data that I was given by HMH to make determinations of what should be structurally engineered and what shouldn't be structurally engineered. This is where I have the bigger problem. And in a way, this is the greatest part of the meeting. I currently know of a location within the Silver Valley that using the same data and the same maps that were given to me by HMH, there is land that currently was asked for a site disturbance permit that falls within a category based upon the information I hear. I was classified as moderate soil erosion in the documents that are here that was given to me. So when you disturb the soil, they say it has moderate erosion problems, which is true based upon the pictures I've already presented and the rocks falling off with the improper cut that was made on that property. I was told that if the property, the site area which you're disturbing, if more than 25% of that is going to be at 15% slope or greater, that it has to be structurally engineered with soil types and the information that was given to me as moderate. They said that because of the way the rock shell was on our property as per HMH, that the moderate all of a sudden got changed to severe. But yet in the data, it clearly states that we're in moderate erosion control. So talking with the person with HMH, he sat there and looked at it and says, okay, well, based upon the fact that the way you've got these slopes, you got this, and with the soil types, that it can be a high risk. And I agreed with him because we have rock falling into the road. So using that same data, this other individual that I know who has been issued a permit for his land has got a soil type that is classified in the same information as severe. I currently measured that property, and in those areas in which the soil did get disturbed is over 15% grade. So I sat back and I looked at it and I go, okay, when I first started this and I looked at HMH, when I first approached the commissioner, is this a legit company? Is this fair? Is this being treated? Is this something that the county's gonna start getting into? So when I told my wife, I said, as long as everyone else is being treated fairly with the way they approach planning and zoning and site disturbances, that it should be treated equally across the board. If my soil type is this and it's this, I'm not a professional. I'm only going off the data that was given to me.
So HMH did they do the work for the other person you know?
They were not required to do it. They were issued a permit after they submitted their initial permit. However the permit was, I have no clue on how that was permitted. I just know that once I looked up the area, given the same data as what was given to me by HMH, which is the reason why they told me I would have to be structurally engineered, that I challenged, and apparently they didn't know that I was taking this down until after he was on site and realized that due to the way I'm doing the project, I'm actually making it flatter, I'm making it better, I'm getting rid of erosion issues for the future. So that's why they did issue that permit. Do I believe HMH should be submitted on every single planning and zoning for every site disturbance? Well, after talking with him, he said that you live in a unique area. You have a lot of steep areas around here, a lot of people trying to push development into steep areas. He said it's going to be pretty much almost every application he could see being justified because of where we live and the type of stuff that people are developing. Do I believe HMH should be used for each person based upon the development? That's not up for me to say, but I just wanted to be treated fairly. So I came to you guys because I don't feel like I was being treated fairly. Yes, I do have my permit when I proposed the bill to the previous commissioners. The comment was made to me, and this is where I really got rubbed wrong. Well, you got your site disturbance permit, you didn't have to structurally engineer it. I figured $1,100 is cheaper than the structural engineering. Well, that's not the purpose behind the reason why, in my opinion. To me, it's, should it be? If it's not, being made aware of it, giving everyone equal treatment for what's being asked on a site disturbance. So, to me, if HMH is able to work with this, I didn't hire this company. I'd be more than happy to try to negotiate my bill with them, but I didn't hire them. They sent the bill to the county. And the other thing that set me back is I'm like, okay, well, if I had to pay for all my fees at the time that I got my issued permit to be able to build the land, start doing my work, I was told that all fees associated with your project had to be paid at that time. So I paid the $65 for her, and she mentioned that to me, and I respected that and made sure the bills were paid. then when I got that bill, I was a little bit taken back by, well, why wasn't that bill added on before I paid for my permit, and I could have discussed it back then. It wasn't until after December that I got the bill. So I would assume at the point that I'm paying my other fees, that if there was a fee for HMH at that point, I would be paying it. It's not until after, so that set me back a little bit, kind of confused me when I got the bill at the time that I paid for the permit. So I think that's pretty much it. The land is looking really good. The erosion down on that lower part, we're getting more sun on the road. It's melting it, making it safer. So some good things are already happening with the property. So to me, that was the biggest thing, was when I saw another piece listed as severe soil erosion, and that gets approved without HMH, but yet I had to go through it with mine without having a person actually show up on site and look at it and go over the whole thing.
Okay.
I hope I explained myself good enough, guys. There's a lot of people around me, so I felt a little bit nervous. Sorry about that.
Is there anything else you want to look at over here?
No, I'm done with this, so if you can
Trying
have that
not to
back.
mess up his papers, but they're getting.
I'll get them, I'll try to get them reorganized again.
Okay,
There's the bill from HMH, which is combined with a bunch of other bills that she highlighted. And then here is the paperwork on the other area that I came across that is basically government data website, which is what HMH used to determine our soil types. We are listed in the 43. The gentleman that I know got issued a permit without structural engineering is in type soil 78, which is worse than the soil that I'm on, as per that information.
let's see where you got that. Do either of you have any questions before I move forward here? Any further?
I
Yeah,
don't, I mean, it's
should
just,
say.
we have no knowledge about all of the other case and the incident.
Do you have a reference to the other case and a permit number or anything like that?
Something to compare, you know, to see why they were.
For transparency,
Yeah.
the one thing I've learned in this valley is that when you start throwing people underneath the bus, it makes it really difficult. So I'm a little bit worried about saying that name and the person and where that property is located.
Okay.
I
This
don't
isn't-
want to stir up any bad feelings in this valley. We run a business in Osborne, and I'll be more than happy to take people there that need to see it and go buy it, or it need to be, or show it on a map. But I mean, if we could keep that as a confidential, but yet for the commissioners to be able to make a legit conversation.
It's a public meeting, it's
Yeah.
recorded.
So, yeah, I understand if you don't wanna do that. Well, let me just go ahead and ask a few questions and ask Monica to be here to help us to hear the county side of this thing as well. This issue of that we don't have it in writing anywhere to warn people that they would have to pay for it if they use HMH. Monica, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that out of everything, that's probably like the best point. Our fee sheet is supposed to be updated. I think the prosecutor's office was working on that a while back. I don't know if anything ever came of it, but we were trying to get on the same page, like countywide, as far as what our fee structure is. So that's definitely something that could be included on there, room for improvement. So to speak directly to that, I would say that's probably like the best point, is like that needs to be included on our fee sheet and will be, I think as soon as everything, and you can make that change anytime, it just has to be adopted, and it's a little bit of a lengthy process, which is why I won't speak for the prosecutor's office, but I believe they were waiting a little bit to get everybody's fees so it could be fully organized and adopted all at once, so we weren't piecemealing it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, but we can change the application as well to include some type of a spot where if you do need, it needs to be checked with HMH, then you will be responsible for, is that?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We have the same thing, which I explained when Bret was talking to the other commissioners, that When we have professional services that are being billed to the county, in association with like a subdivision, that is something that is on our fee sheet, and that's just actual cost of whatever those professional services are. So if our county surveyor, Rob Stratton, is reviewing a plat on behalf of the county to make sure that it complies with Idaho code and our code, he bills by the hour. He bills us for the invoice, and then we in turn basically invoice the applicant for those fees. So this is a similar process, and that could be included on the fee sheet for actual cost. We could just lump it under professional services, and then that way we wouldn't have to differentiate between Stratton and HMH. And then also include it on the application, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as this other site goes and the concern that we didn't treat the two sites in the same manner, are you aware of the other site, and are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's only been 2 permits issued there in the past maybe year, so, sorry I interrupted you a little bit.
No,
What was
so
the rest of the
I'm
question?
just getting your take on why the other one was permitted without
Sure.
HMH.
Yeah, of course. So we do have, everything we do, we try to base off of code, and code does have certain stipulations with respect to if the slope is greater than a certain amount, if it's a sensitive area, things like that. It basically lists out, it's a bit unclear, and there's definitely some gray area like we've been talking about for the past, week or something like that. So what we have to do is take every one nowadays case by case. And with this other one that was on a neighboring property, I actually did perform a site visit along with some folks from ICP, Panhandle Health. We went out and conducted a site visit, and ultimately the scope of the project was much larger. So it was a larger area. So when we talk about terms of that slope and that percentage that would kick over to a professional engineer needing to be consulted in terms of the applicant hiring someone to design a plan, because there was so much land, and then within that, the ground that this applicant was working on was flat, more or less flat, whereas in the case of Bret's permit, it was sort of like a smaller scope and then a steeper slope. So you kind of have this broad range where we have portions of flat, kind of like easier to, basically not a ton of site disturbance happening and recurring. It's more just like some minor leveling and some road cutting, as opposed to basically completely removing the top of a hillside.
So-
That was the difference there.
So in your mind, they really there was more disparity in the two properties.
Correct. And with the data that we have, or the sheets on the like the soil types, it's a really complicated map that you can use to figure that out. Actually had to consult with HMH a little bit on this second permit after Bret's, in trying to handle everything in-house, trying to understand that map and how that works, and it's very complicated. And so when you search for a property, you try to locate a property, it's like very acute, so it pinpoints kind of like where you are. So you might have one soil type not too far away from another soil type, and that's why the site visit is so important. Would also like to add that we typically don't collect fees prior to issuing a permit. Any building permit, even subdivisions, we invoice later, so we normally don't collect fees up front. Just because we don't know how much is gonna go into, if we have to conduct 2 or 3 site visits, it's just easier to kind of lump everything in once we've issued the permit. So going back on that, performing the site visit, looking at all the data, but as Bret pointed out, we can't just look at photos of things, and we can't just say something appears to be something, especially when we're talking about hillside development of this nature. So ultimately what it came down to with the 2 permits is you had a smaller surface area and a steeper slope, as opposed to a greater surface area with kind of like a little bit more like dips and a little bit more like leveled out sites.
Thank you, Ms. Mills.
Thanks.
Bret, back to you, and you other two jump in if you want. What would you think would be a fair resolution of this situation?
Well, that brings up, she brought up a really great point, and I spent like 3 hours on the phone, then another 3 hours with HMH up on the property, and her point I think that's where the education purpose can help a lot of people in the valley too, when they're deciding to cut in the property. The way HMH explained it to me, it says it doesn't matter the sizes, the scope of which your property is, how big it is, a mountainside, a ridge line, doesn't matter. What he explained to me is that when you disturb dirt, you're gonna cut a square into anything. Let's say you put in a 100-foot by 100-foot pad. Well, that becomes your site disturbed area, he said to me. So within that site disturbed area, if more than 25% of that area that you're disturbing at the moment you put a shovel in the ground, go to corner, rectangular to rectangular, circles, whatever you have, that becomes your 100% site disturbance. If 25% of that site disturbance is greater than the 15% slope within that site disturbed area, you must be structurally engineered. And then with the soil type that was there, rated as high risk, based upon the data that was given to me, that's what I'm being told by HMH, is that it's the disturbed area, not how big of an area you have. So when she brought that up, I'm analyzing the information that HMH gave me, and it's in the writings, and he's presented that in all of these writings, that he says your disturbed site area is everywhere you're planning to cut in and put a pad or a road. That is your disturbed site. And in the code, it states that if your disturbed area is 25% of that disturbed area, more than that is of 15% grade higher, you'd have to be structurally engineered. Hence the reason why it was stated to me by HMH that as long as we take that null away and cut it away, it turns it into a flatter area and on Monica's behalf, there is a strong argument that she turned up and said that there could be a strong argument to deny this permit, even though it falls within that category. So I'm still confused a little bit, and I just didn't get into it with Monica further on that, is what's the strong argument? If HMH is telling me what they're telling me and it's within the scope of the data given to me, I'm still confused on what is that strong argument that kind of set me back a little bit. And I didn't dig into it further because she did accept the permit, and so it's kind of wasted for me to go back and try to discuss that, but I should have asked it to give me some more knowledge. What is it that's still disturbing? And maybe ask HMH, well, what is it that is a strong argument to still deny this permit? And it's in her writing when she issued the permit to me. But when she says what she says about the area, that's what I was understood. So if it is different, then the information I have is totally different than what she just said. And that's why I'm still confused. Because when HMH tells me in 6 hours conversation, 5 hours conversation, that the disturbed area is what you touch, a road, a pad, that becomes your site. That becomes the disturbed area as per code. If more than 25% of that area is in slope greater than 15% with high-risk soil types, it must be structurally engineered. So when this other site came up and I looked at those areas where those pads were going, I measured those sites and I used the same instruments for measurement on our property, and they were greater than 15%. They were in the 18 to 22% range.
The whole site disturbance was
In
bigger.
the areas where those sites are disturbed, they were greater than 15% in that area before it was disturbed.
And then that's the other property.
Yeah, that's the other property. So
Well-
that's why I'm still confused then if it's all about how big the area is, if it's a 50-acre parcel or a 100-acre parcel, is that what's used because that's totally different than what the guy from HMH told me. And in the writings.
More specific to my question though, because I'm hearing in your mind, these are more similar, in the county's view, they were a little different. The one issue I think the Board of Commissioners can deal with at this point is the fact that you were charged without us really having it in writing that you were gonna be charged, and that seems unfair to the taxpayer, or something we could remedy and put in future forms. I'm not sure how we remedy the rest of that right now.
I think that's a great remedy, is to make people aware of what they're being faced with at the time the permit's issued, and it's in writing. No one can debate writing. It's in the writing, so. Back to
the county. Do you care to, do you want to address anything further, or do you think, anything else I'm not thinking about or considering here?
I think it's just it's just a broken record issue of our code is unclear, and it leaves too much to guesswork and too much to one individual or a certain amount of individuals to make that call. So really in talks with HMH, based off of our current site disturbance ordinance, you know, one of the options would be any site disturbance needs a professional engineer, which is unfortunate because then people are paying
Expensive.
thousands
Yeah.
and thousands of dollars, and maybe
Yeah.
they
That's right.
don't have a slope that's greater than 15%. So that would be the alternative, but that's a little bit too strict. So you kind of have to find that middle ground of, while you do want the code to be somewhat, I don't want to say flexible, but you want to be able to get projects done for people, and when you're able to help them get through that, however you put the county in a position where they're approving permits or issuing permits that may or may not be detrimental because of lack of guidance from the code.
Now you know
So
why I'm here
ultimately,
today.
sorry, I wasn't finished.
That's why I'm here
So
today.
ultimately, the bigger project would be going back to the code, going back to your base and saying, how do
What
we,
we've been talking about.
how do we have a code where every single person that comes in, we tell them exactly what they need, it's gonna be the same thing for every person, and that's really difficult to do with their current situation. So that's long term, that's the soapbox I'm gonna get on every single time, is that when you put somebody in a position and they're feeling pressure to issue a permit based on an applicant or an individual or a property owner, they're stuck in this position of, well, now that burden falls on them rather than the code book.
Yeah, and we have heard that from Ms. Miller already, then I recognize that we do have a problem and we need to work on our code. Commissioners, I have a thought or two, but do you have any further questions from Ms. Miller, Mr. Allen?
No, I don't.
Right
No
now,
additional questions.
I would entertain a motion that we could do better. We could start putting this caution in the paperwork so that an applicant had a absolute black and white chance to see that they were gonna be charged extra if they use this other service. And so I would entertain a motion that we waive the,
If it puts a burden onto the taxpayer, we'll pay it. I don't want this burdened onto the taxpayer.
well, I would entertain a motion that we waive it because it wasn't as fair as we could be, that we could be fairer by altering the application form. But I'm just entertaining that thought, so either you have a thought or different thought, or wanna make a motion, or we can table this if you're not ready to make any decisions. I think Monica's pointed out the big problem that we know we need to work on, and she and I have talked yesterday about possible long-term solutions for how we're gonna do that.
And changing our application that,
Changing the
possibly has a
application could fix
checkbox
that.
that says that you're gonna incur fees from, H&H or whatever,
HMH, yeah.
HMH.
If other professional services are needed
Right.
to determine.
So we could make that clearer in paperwork, so there's no argument about who was told what. Because it is a gray area, and because we can't fix the code issue right now, we have to work on that long term. That would be my solution I'd propose.
Okay, you wanna make the motion? Or do you want?
I'm
anything?
still unsure, but
So I'm sure you wanna table it?
I'd prefer to table it,
Okay.
or
Yeah. I'm ready to
It's-
move, she's ready to table, what do you wanna do?
it's up to you guys.
Well, since it wasn't in the application itself, that's the problem that I see, that we're not notifying people. It's like contract law. When you sign a contract, everything should be in that contract. And that's kind of the problem that I see right now. I don't know about the verbal. And verbal is also another way, but we've got two people saying, you said you didn't hear it, she said it. So, I'm kinda leaning more towards that we need to change our application to show the public that they're gonna incur fees outside of the scope of, just the application fee. So, and then also I believe we probably need to do a resolution to approve those fees if, update the fees with the planning and zoning.
That's
Do
what
we
the
have
prosecuting
any?
attorney's working on, right?
And that's what the fee,
I don't wanna speak for them, cause that was something that was like quite a while ago.
Yeah. That needs to
But
be
we
addressed,
did
though.
meet with staff from the prosecutor's office to go over a fee sheet. This is like a long time ago, several months ago. And so that was my understanding, that it was, they were meeting with each department to clarify fees and to basically get a definition of the fees, and then would update the entire, to update the entire thing, then it would be adopted by resolution, which had been done not that long ago, but the formatting was off and it was really, really complicated and just kind of messy is what I got from that.
We'll touch base with those.
If you
Cool,
wanna
that'd be
make the
awesome.
motion.
Well, I'll motion that we waive the HMH fee because the lack of clarity in the paperwork process. And then we'll address that separately with P and Z as far as trying to alter the form so that we don't leave it up to an oral argument about who said what, and we just make that clear. So I would motion that we waive the fee in this case because the county could be clearer.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So thank you for your time. We're going to waive the fee because we agree with you on that part of it. Thank you for your responses and help on that. We do have a county code clarity issue, but I appreciate that you already were on that. We're working on that. I thank you for that, and hopefully this addresses your concern.
It does, and I appreciate you know, taking a look at trying to find ways to help the community, and Monica addressing her point of making it towards fair across the board. It was my main goal today, so for everyone, appreciate it.
All right, we're taking a step in that direction.
Thank you very much.
Good to meet you.
Very nice meeting you guys. I know you guys got a lot of work to do, so
Well,
I'll
we
get out of
do
your
not-
hair and let you guys make
We
up
need
those.
to adjourn.